Aloha, and welcome to Feast, Dish, and Dialogue, a podcast presented by the Hawaii Ag and Culinary Alliance, sharing conversations from the Feast Summit at the annual Hawaiʻi Food and Wine Festival. Here, leaders across food, education, agriculture, sustainability, and tourism come together to explore the future of food systems and hospitality, and how culinary sits at the center of the visitor experience in Hawaii and beyond. In this Feast Dialogue episode, we bring you a dynamic panel on the power and influence of the celebrity chef, recorded live at the Feast Summit. Moderated by Emmy Award-winning journalist Kainoa Carlson, creator and host of Kitchen Scraps, and featuring panelists Shota Nakajima, Reem Assil, Jonathan Waxman, and Shep. This conversation brings together celebrated chefs and industry leaders to discuss the evolution of the celebrity chef and how they've helped redefine what it means to be a chef in today's world. Pull up a seat and join the dialogue.
Well, my name is Kainoa Carlson. I'm from Hawaii News Now. We started Kitchen Scraps earlier this year, which is a local television show here for our local chefs to battle it out, giving them the platform here at home to showcase their skills. So it's been a lot of fun. I know everyone is here to talk story with our panel and our celebrity chefs, so let's get to it. We're going to go ahead and introduce our panel who's going to be joining us right now. First up, he's a chef, a restaurateur, a TV personality who has leveraged his platform to spotlight Japanese cuisine and culture for global audiences. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Shota Nakajima. Here we go. Next up, she is a chef, a author, an activist whose restaurants and writing highlight Arab cuisine while advocating for equity and social justice. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Reem Assil. Next up, our next panelist, a legendary chef and mentor, widely recognized for training and inspiring generations of chefs who are now leaders in the culinary world. Ladies and gentlemen, the OG Chef Jonathan Waxman. Our final panelist just received an award previously, just next door, one of many. He's a visionary, talent manager, a producer, often credited with creating the entire concept known as the celebrity chef. He's helped culinary leaders build global platforms and audiences. Shep. All right, Chef Waxman, we're actually thinking we would love to start with you. We would love to start with you about this title, Celebrity Chef, what that means and your mentorship throughout that process, and what you think about it.
Oh yeah, that's kind of weird, but thank you. Hi everybody. I started my career in Kaanapali Beach in 1973 at the Rusty Harpoon. And I was, you know, it's sort of funny, and then I was playing in a band. I used to play music, and I was playing in a band that broke up, and all my friends were surfers. They go, you have two options in Maui. You either sell drugs or work in a restaurant. So I opted for the latter. And I kind of loved doing it, and I got back to Berkeley, California, and where I grew up. And my father said, it's time to get a real job. Stop with this bullshit with music. And so he wrote down this number on a matchbook, and he wrote this guy's name, Jerry. I called Jerry up, said, Jerry, is it an insurance job? Just put me out of my misery. He goes, no, just come down and see me. So I ended up selling Ferraris at age 24 in Berkeley, California. And when I was there, the owner's wife of the Ferrari dealership said, all you do is talk about food, you don't talk about cars, which actually wasn't true because I did like cars. And I eventually bought Ferraris, so that's a whole other story. Anyway, she signed me up to go to a cooking school in San Francisco called Tante Marie, owned by this wonderful woman. And I took a cooking class, I loved it, and that woman then invited me to lunch. And I said, why is this woman inviting me to lunch? What did I do wrong? Anyway, she had signed me up for a cooking school in Paris at La Varenne, and it was the first semester of their operation. And so I went to Paris in 1976, and luckily I was able to work in France. I actually had a working permit. I was one of 4 Americans that actually had one at that time. And I got back to the States, and so anyway, so I get back, and my father goes, you know, are you going to get a job at Sizzler? Is that the deal? And I said, I don't know, no thanks. But what was weird when I was in Paris, I got Paris Match is kind of the life magazine of France. And on the cover was this guy, Paul Bocuse, standing under the Eiffel Tower. And he was all surrounded by all his friends, Roger Verger and all your buddy, and all these different people. And I said, there's something up with this chef thing. I don't get it. Why are the chefs on the cover of magazines? You know, I thought chefs were these people behind closed doors that did, you know, cook food. Anyway, so my career went along, and I, you know, whatever. And at one point, I was on the cover of Daily News magazine in 1985 in a bathrobe with a glass of champagne. And somebody called me the first celebrity chef in New York. And I said, what the hell does that mean? And my friends were all embarrassed by actually I was wearing a kimono, if you have to really be honest about the whole thing. And then this kid that used to work for me, his name was Bobby Flay.
What's he doing now?
And so Bobby came to work for me as a young apprentice cook when he was 21. And when Bobby's career took off, I was just so happy. I was like the proudest dad you could ever imagine. And so I never thought that I'd ever even think about being on TV. I thought my job was mentoring people like Bobby Flay. That was my job. That's what I felt like doing. And then one day, this woman who's my publicist calls me up and said, they're doing this show called Top Chef Masters. This is 2008 or 2009. And she said, I want you to do the show. And I said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be on TV. You know, Bobby does a great job. All these people are on, I don't want to do it. She goes, just do it. And I said, no. And then Tom Colicchio said, just fucking do it. So I went on TV, and that was kind of the rest. That's the rest of the story. Just went from there. It's weird being on TV. I'll tell you this. It's weird. You're kind of in a bubble, strange, weird bubble. But then chefs are always in weird bubbles. When you're cooking on the line, you're in a weird bubble. The world doesn't matter around you. All you see is what you're doing. And so TV and cooking are really kind of synonymous. They really were the same thing. So it was actually, I kind of liked it, to be honest with you. And anyway, so that's my tiny little story.
Thank you, Shep. Shep, I want to transition over to you as well, because when we're thinking about the early days of, especially given your career in entertainment, realizing that chefs could be household names. What were those early conversations like when you're going to different places and thinking, celebrity chefs, this chef can really change the game when it comes to television and media?
It sort of came out of anger, which usually is not part of my character. But I met Roger Verger. At that time, I was a macaroni and ketchup guy. But he seemed like I had found my mentor. And I started traveling with him and got associated with all the great chefs of the world through him. And he was doing an engagement in California at the Highlands Inn. Remember the famous Highlands Inn? They had a Master Chef series. So it was the first time I really went on the road. I said to him, Mr. Verger, I want to be your road manager. I'm always at the front of the house in like a suit. I want to do what I do, manage, you know, collect the money, do stuff. So we show up at the Highlands Inn, and I go to check him into his room, which I had never done before, and it's next to the garbage dump. And I'm so embarrassed, so I give him my room. And then he cooks the meal. It was a $500 meal with a cooking lesson and a dinner. And I asked him, who do I get the money from? And he said, oh, no, Shep, I would not take money. I said, Mr. Verger, it's $20,000 gross. What do you mean you wouldn't take money? No, Shep, I wouldn't take money. But we stayed the next night. Roy Yamaguchi was cooking the next night. And I wanted him, I had never been able to get him to Hawaii, Mr. Verger, and I wanted him to come to Hawaii with me. So I said, let's stay overnight and try Roy's food. And I made a reservation for 2. We get to the dining room, and the maitre d' pulls me over, and he says, oh, I'm so sorry, the help can't eat in the dining room. We can feed you at the bar. And who's the help? Mr. Verger, he cooked here last night. I said, so let me see, you didn't pay him. You gave him the shittiest room in the hotel. And when he comes in to buy dinner, you tell him he can't eat there because he's the help. Well, F you, this is going to change. And I went to Hawaii the next day. I had an event with Kenny Loggins at a hotel there for Lexus or somebody. And Wolfgang Puck was there. And I saw Wolf, who I had known through Verger. And I told Wolf what happened. He said, oh, that's nothing. He said, I got to the airport, my ticket was coach instead of first class. When I land, there's no car to meet me. I call up the chef and he said, oh, we're really busy, take a cab. He said, I got 150 pounds of food, take a cab. I get to the hotel, they don't have a refrigerator for me. They give me a rack and tell me to take it to the next place. He said, so if you're gonna help Mr. Verger, you gotta help me. And about 2 weeks later, I got to LA and I went to, he invited me for lunch to Spago. And as I was driving, I realized they don't serve lunch. And I think you were there maybe that day, Jonathan. And in the room were like 45, 50 of the world's greatest chefs, all of them saying they all get treated the same way. So that's when I sort of decided I had the skills for managing musical artists to change that perception. And it was so obvious to me that these were celebrities, but they were celebrities who had no way to talk to their audience except the 80 people in their restaurant. So I remember telling the chefs in that first meeting, if there weren't MTV, if there wasn't radio, if there weren't record players, Michael Jackson would be a wandering minstrel. We got to build highways for you to touch your audience. And that's what I set out doing. I got the Food Network on the air, started getting book deals, you'd go to the supermarket and there was Chef Boyardee. It wasn't local chef's food. It was so obvious to me that these were real celebrities. And luckily it happened, and it's because of guys like Jonathan believed in me and let me go run and be a lunatic.
Thank you for that, Shep. Woo. Chef Reem, we're going to transition over to you. You've used your restaurants and your voice to advocate for social justice and equity as well. What life experience has shaped your decision to link your food with activism?
The simplest answer to that question would probably be burnout. I had an interesting kind of entry into food in that I worked for a decade in the nonprofit world. I call myself a nonprofit self-deporter, I guess, nonprofit refugee. I was working on the front lines with a lot of working class communities in my home of Oakland that I've lived in for 20 years now. And I just kept hitting a wall and having, my job at the time was helping people, the simplest way to describe it is helping people find their voice in their neighborhoods and in their jobs, and to talk, and negotiate with developers and city council officials of like what development could look like that would include living wage jobs, affordable housing. And people just couldn't imagine it. And it was getting really tiring to not imagine what it is that we were fighting for. And so I was really burnt out. And in 2010, I had an opportunity to travel with my father to Syria and Lebanon. And food had always kind of been in the backdrop in the hardest times of my life. And in fact, when I became a chef, people were like, oh, we saw that coming, even when I didn't see it coming. And as cliche as it sounds, it was in those food spaces, in the street corner bakeries in Beirut, and the street vendors in Damascus, where I had this kind of epiphany, And it was that sensory epiphany, just from the smell of fresh baked bread and hearing the laughter of my people, connecting, commiserating, laughing, despite the political turmoil outside those doors, that they were creating this kind of heaven on earth, right? This real feeling of connectedness and dignity that I was really inspired. I realized that my people have always been masters of hospitality, and it's what has helped them thrive and survive generation upon generation. And that was what I felt like was missing in my work in Oakland. I wanted to bring that warmth of my culture back to my community. And so I kind of had the vision of Reem's, my restaurant, but I knew that I had to kind of figure out how to get there. And so to the chagrin of my immigrant parents who didn't understand what I was doing in the first place in the nonprofit world, I quit my job and I enrolled in culinary school, and I became obsessed with bread. And bread is kind of this amazing thing. I really focused on bread because it's, first of all, everybody eats bread, right? It's this thing that transcends all cultures. It's a thing that connects the rich to the poor. Like, if we could use this tool of bread to build community, like, what could that look like? And so I kind of set on a journey to build our restaurant. And we started off very small, but I think that people really gravitated towards it because they saw themselves in it. And people didn't know anything about Arab food at that time, and I was very intentional about really telling the story behind our food. But the thing that I heard over and over again when people walked into our restaurant is like, that reminds me of home, right? And so it became kind of our mission to create a sense of home, especially at a time that home is a really elusive thing right now. And I realized that food could be this kind of, new frontier of organizing, so to speak, something that people can relate to, right? Everybody eats. And so we became really intentional about creating that space. And then in 2017, Food and Wine named us the best new restaurants of the year. And it was really weird. Like, we weren't doing this to be famous or anything. We were just in our little nook in Oakland. And to me, that just indicated that people, it was not just because our food was good, because our food is good, but that people were ready for another model of what restaurants could be, not just as a restaurant, but as an anchor community space.
You're listening to Feast, Dish and Dialogue, conversations from the Feast Summit exploring how food, culture, and hospitality shape the visitor experience in Hawaii and beyond.
Chef Shota, transitioning over to you. You've done the national cooking competition shows, the food networks. How has all that visibility changed your responsibility as a chef in terms of influencing what and how people are eating?
I guess to kind of start with, when I trained in Japan, I grew up over here. I grew up in a Japanese household. My mom cooked every single day. We went out to eat once a month, Red Robin, and that was like, oh my God, we're getting hamburgers and steak fries. That's so cool. And I went to go train in Japan from 18 to 23. I had a dream of going to work in a Michelin-star restaurant. I came back and I wanted to, introduce different parts of Japanese culture. But when I came back here, that was 2014, I would say I do Japanese food, and everyone would go, California roll, spicy tuna roll, sushi. And there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, I think I started to build this, how do I convey more of this stuff, more of Japanese cuisine to people? And I think I've always worked on that through doing fine dining, Japanese restaurants. I had a restaurant in Seattle in 2015. It was a kaiseki restaurant. We changed the menu every week, and I was gung-ho about not doing sushi at all. Man, the amount of reservations that walked out because we didn't have a California roll. Anyways. But now I think being able to go on Top Chef, having a platform, I'm able to kind of convey what Japanese cuisine and I think there's a high interest in what, authentic, I always think is a unique word, but what authentic is, what it is, like what Japanese food actually is. And I think there's more curiosity towards that. So, and with my platform, what I try to focus on is introducing, little different cooking styles or easy home-cooked dishes, and try to spread the little joy and love of food that I have to people that my parents and my parents' parents taught me.
I love that, Chef. And Chef, thank you so much for staying and hanging out with us as well. I'm curious as well, throughout your keynote speech today, you mentioned the term celebrity chef, first being called it, that you kind of hated it, you didn't like it, but then realizing the platform and the attention that came along with it as well. How have you used the platform that is known as the celebrity chef to continue to impact?
For me, I think You know, one of the things that's been most meaningful about, really honestly, Shep, what you created, is that it's allowed us to gather as a community. We all know who each other are. And it often was because somebody else is doing a fundraiser, Share Our Strength, Feeding America, Susan G. Komen, whatever it might, the Liver Foundation. And we would show up because people really valued that event and would pay a high ticket price because it's tough to get into their restaurants on a Friday or a Saturday night if you forgot to make a reservation, right? All of that. But it's really allowed us to see each other, I think. And what was amazing to me was when Eric Kessler and I did the first boot camp. It was actually fiscally sponsored by Wholesome Wave. We were partnering with Beard, but when we put out the call to chefs to see who might be interested in coming, 1,500 chefs respond to something that only 15 chefs could come to. And that says a lot, that 1,500 chefs realize that what they do is more than just bread, and giving people that sense of the place that you call home so that they can feel the same love and the same safety, the same consideration that we've been sharing with people for decades, right? So there's power in that celebrity thing, because I think now more than ever, people really do take us seriously. And I think that's very, very important. We already know that data proves that people trust us more than so many other people when it comes to issues around food. Now we have the opportunity as a community, I think, to make the world a better place at a time where it really needs peace. And I think we can do that through how we serve people and how we take care of each other.
Love that, Chef. As we continue to talk about the impact of it, Shep, I did want to go back to you because in the early stages, was there pushback from chefs when you were wanting to turn them into these type of celebrity, type of icons? What were those conversations like? Was there pushback? Did people support you? And what did you have to navigate to get us to where we are now?
No pushback from the chefs. I don't think they believed it could be done. So they just sort of, they followed their lives. There was a big, big pushback from people who were making money off the chefs. For example, there was a series, the big food events back in the 70s and 80s were a Taste of LA, Taste of New York, Taste of Chicago. It would draw 1 million people. But nobody had a stove. They wouldn't supply a stove. And which got me crazy. I started thinking, would I let Luther Vandross go and not have a PA and lights? How can you be a chef, present what you do as an artist, and not have a stove, have to transport your food? James Beard House was the same way. They didn't have a kitchen. I couldn't get a promoter in America to supply stoves. So I went out and did a festival in Miami, which is now the South Beach Film Festival, where I got 35 chefs and every one of them had a stove and cooked. And the promoters around the country got crazy because now they had the chefs got used to having a stove. They had to pay to have a stove come in. So those were the people who really resisted me. Anyone who was making a profit off the chefs and were then made to supply them with things that artists need to present what they do. They thought of them as cooks, and I thought of them as artists. And you can't present an artist without giving him an environment that works for his art form. But from the chefs themselves, I don't think anybody really took me seriously. It was this guy from Hollywood who was, crazy. He's going to make us, sure, he's going to make us celebrity chefs. But everybody sort of gave me my freeway and went along with it. But there were certain guys. Emerald took it very seriously, but he wasn't known. He had just opened his own restaurant. He had the restaurant open maybe 2 months when I started working with him. He had been in another restaurant. But the guys who were, ingrained and had had their restaurants for years just thought, here's another guy with an idea. And they went about cooking. But gave me the leeway and to go do what I did.
Chef Waxman, going over there, you've mentored so many chefs throughout your career. Is there a specific quality or trait that you've seen that makes for a more successful transition into chefs that you're under, like the Bobby Flazers, or something specific or a trait that you saw in those chefs that told you, okay, this would be a good transition to go into this TV?
That's a super question. I think Michelle and I were talking briefly. My goddaughter started to work with him, and she's a terrific child. But I know there's something inside her that's magical. And how do you elicit that passion from that individual? How do you get out from that person who she really is? And I think that's what chefs really need to concentrate on. And it's hard because you want to run a business and you want to, you want to make money, you want to satisfy your customers coming in, you want to make sure everybody's happy. But at the end of the day, the real important part is every individual that you come in contact with. And I kind of look at everybody sort of, I'm from Berkeley, so everything's equal for me. I don't have issues with anybody. So I try to look at everybody from a sort of just a singular point of view. Who is this person? What's their story? And everybody's story is so important. When you listen to people's story and what they say and where they've come from, we did this dinner for Charles Fawn last night, and in remembrance of him. And Charles and I did a podcast 3 years ago. Mark Samuelson and I had to do a podcast together. And Charles started telling the story of growing up in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive. I started crying. It got me really emotional. I said, this story is so crazy, how he overcame this to go to San Francisco, and he was living 10 adults, male adults in one room and 10 female adults in another room, studio apartments, and how he rose up to be one of the greatest chefs in the world. So these stories, I think, are the kind of things that I try to get out of people and understand who they are. And some people are very recalcitrant to talk about themselves, but I think that's the first part of it. And the second part of it is if they can cook. It's not everybody can cook. I'm sorry. I tell you right now, there are people that really want to cook, people that think they can cook. There are people that really, pretend they cook, but there are very few. So I always use the Broadway play analogy. You go up for a role on Broadway and 50 people show up and one person gets the role. Does that mean the other 49 are terrible? No. They just didn't hit the mark that day. And that's a little bit what this celebrity thing's about. It's finding that one person has that unique quality that that you can go, and I say, I call somebody at the Food Network, I say, this person is unbelievable. I don't know, you have to see her. It's just incredible. Aisha is now on Bobby Flay's, Titan thing. I don't know what he's calling it. Triple, whatever it's called. And, and she is so terrific. And Bobby took me aside. He goes, this woman is better than anybody. She really owns it. She can cook. She's articulate. She has moxie. And she's funny as hell, and she could do it on camera. That's a lot of talent right there. So finding that kind of person is really difficult.
Feast, Dish, and Dialogue is presented by the Hawaiʻi Ag and Culinary Alliance, the nonprofit organization behind the Hawaiʻi Food and Wine Festival. Founded to strengthen Hawaii's culinary and agricultural industries, HACA connects world-class culinary events with year-round investment in education, workforce development, and local agriculture. Through programs that support students, entrepreneurs, farmers, and hospitality professionals, HACA works to ensure Hawaii's food and hospitality ecosystem continues to grow, innovate, and thrive.
I want to transition back into Chef Reem and Chef Shota for a second here. And we're continuing to talk about this title, Celebrity Chef. Social media now has really changed the way that people are ingesting media, even ingesting food, the way that we're coming into recipes, coming into what restaurants are opening, where everything is. How do you navigate that currently right now as restaurateurs, chefs, appeasing both, having to now be a chef slash content creator? And how is that?
You're the content creator. I want to learn from you.
You know, I'm learning too. You know, I think content creating, my honest thing about it is it's one of those things that the algorithm changes all the time, and there's something new you have to study. And I am such a nerd. When it's a video game, like RPG, I'm not someone who finishes it 80% of the way. I try to finish it 100% of the way. One thing I've realized about social media is, for me, the biggest thing I enjoy is every creator goes through the same thing, and it's been one of the most collaborative industries that I've been able to encounter. I can reach out to someone who does this for a living. I've never met them. I'll be on a phone call with them for 30 minutes talking about algorithm, what works for them. And throughout that, I've made so many friends and so many acquaintances and just almost a different perspective, because I grew up in the restaurant industry, and a lot of these content creators that I've met aren't from the restaurant industry fully. I think just trying to figure that out, and I think I did kind of a whole turn of like, okay, this does better, and now I've kind of gotten back to like, this is just what I want to put out there. This is fun. I like to keep things positive. I think the world is beautiful because there's all different kinds of people, and I want my role to be someone you can come to my page and it's positive, it's fun, it's light, and you get to learn something about Japanese food, and I want to provide that for the people, for myself.
How about you, Chef?
Yeah, social media, I feel like I'm still a newbie in some ways. I still came from that like era of Facebook and then transitioned into Instagram and kind of learning it, I would say. And then just kind of how do you balance that with running your restaurants? That's always been the hard thing for me. But I guess I would say crowdsourcing my social media. I think like my cookbook is the thing that I think about. That's when like my following went up, is like really using that cookbook tour. When people cook your recipes and they put them up, and being able to circulate that, I think gave me a lot of visibility. And I think that is my ethos, is like, how do I do more collaborative things and leave the content creation to the people who know how to do it.
It's always fascinating when we do the television, so when I'm coming to chefs, they're like, what the hell do you want now? But it always turns out great. It always turns out great.
It's the technology of it. I feel like I could like do it, but I need someone to do the lighting and like I get flustered with the technology.
I learned everything on YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube University is a thing.
You know, I'd just like to throw one thing out about celebrity chef. Is such a weird category, because what's happened now is that every chef is a celebrity. So no, you don't ever say the cook at the restaurant anymore like you used to say 30 years ago. It's the chef at the restaurant. So even if it's a local place where the guy's never been on TV, to those customers, he's what we might call a celebrity. And I think that's one of the biggest changes in the landscape. He's not help at the restaurant. He's a star in his own restaurant. And it's nice if that celebrity goes to more people. But it still works if you're in one small restaurant. To those people, you are an artist and you're a chef. You're not just a cook. And I think that's been one of the biggest changes in the landscape.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the thing for me is like just living my life and doing it more publicly. Yeah. I don't know, people really crave vulnerability, seeing me as a whole human. It is weird sometimes when like random people in conferences like walk up and they're like, how's Zane? That's my 7-year-old. You know, and then I'm like, how do they know? But then I realize that I'm posting about my life, and that's a double-edged sword, I think. I think it comes with the territory of being in the public eye, but I think for me what keeps me grounded, kind of going back to the theme of, you know, maybe there are other young Arab women who want to get in the food industry, or people who don't think that they can be single parents and own a restaurant. Like, I'm giving them inspiration that, yeah, it can be done. So I think, yeah, it's a double-edged sword to like have your life, and not every celebrity chef does that, but I do think that that is, for better or worse, part of my brand.
I think the big difference is that every chef is a celebrity in their own restaurant, which never used to exist. And you guys are probably too young for it, but we remember when, you know, weren't considered artists. You were considered help.
But you brought up a very good point, which the wider the demographic net that we throw to encourage people to come into this industry, by seeing diversity, by seeing how much fun it is, kind of hide the sweat and tears part of it, you know, because that comes later. Not everybody makes it through that stage. But I think I like to sweat and have blood come out. I enjoy it. I like all the pain. I like the suffering. I like feeling tired at the end of the night. I like congratulating my crew on doing a great job. So if we can throw out a demographic net that shows how diverse we are, how much fun it is, I think this industry is so small, we're so disorganized. I mean, Michelle, you know how our lobbyists work, which we don't work very well. I'm sorry to say. That's one thing we need to really amplify. But I think the food industry is really at a very sort of infantile stage. I don't think the potential for the food industry is so gigantic. We don't realize that. I'm part of this group called Wonder in the East Coast, and there's a visionary named Mark Lorey who really wants to, you know, put chefs on a pedestal, and he wants to make it so that anybody can have a chef designed meal delivered to their house, or they could pick it up at a reasonable price, and it's real food, and it's delicious, and it's made by somebody like me. The more things that we do like that, the better. And I think that's, you know, it's starting in the school cafeterias. Yep. I mean, that to me is like the first baseline of all this. You know, chefs in school cafeterias, absolutely. That's where our impact is gigantic. I remember going to with Aaron Sanchez to the elementary school that he went to and my kids went to. And we started giving the kids apples and oranges and salads. And the looks on these kids' faces, and they go, oh my God, real food. Who knew? And that was, to me, the sort of, that was a spark that ignited my vision about what could happen in the future.
I think, you know, Jonathan, to your point, that influence that we do have in that broader net we cast has been natural. And I think we do have an opportunity as a culinary community, as the community of those who feed, to become more intentional about that and start really aggregating and work together. One of the things that we're doing at Wholesome Wave next, it's under pilot, but it's called One Kitchen. So we're taking what's been done at the boot camps kind of on the road, what Chefs Collaborative wasn't able to accomplish, and basically get chefs, all who work in the same place that they call home. So chefs right now in Texas, Georgia, Colorado, and California, it's under pilot, but have those chefs come together, because they all do it anyway. They all show up at the same fundraisers. We're always the auction items. Yeah, we're comparing, what did your auction item go for? What did you go for? What did you go for? How much did you go for, man, right? But flipping the script, and we come together in the place that we call home and say, we as the culinary community are going to work on universal free lunch at school in the state of Colorado. We as a culinary community are going to work to get the supermajority state house of the state of Texas, who did do a one-time $6 million grant to double food stamps for fruits and vegetables, to make it a permanent part of the state budget. If all of the, and Shep taught me this, it's for us to be able to get on all of the media markets in Texas, Corpus Christi, Lubbock, San Antonio, College Station, Houston, Denver, and talk about, wouldn't it be awesome? And thanking those representatives, and then going on our digital media networks and talking about it in generative, positive, fun, and joyful ways, that we can move the needle. When we started doubling food stamps for fruits and vegetables, it was illegal. We worked with George W. Bush and it became legal. We worked with the Obama administration, it became a fully funded federal pilot. We worked with the first Trump administration and it became permanent. So food is nonpartisan, and we have an opportunity to do that if we can aggregate ourselves as a community. I think we should all do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. I do believe right now at this time, one more round of applause for our panel here. Incredible.
If today's conversation inspires you, we invite you to experience it in person at the Feast Summit, returning Thursday, November 5th, 2026 in Honolulu during the 16th annual Hawaiʻi Food and Wine Festival. Mark your calendars, tickets go on sale this May. Learn more at hawaiifoodandwinefestival.com.
We're right around that sweet spot. I do believe we've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. We'd love to open it up for Q&A. If anyone wants to ask any of our panelists anything right now, is that time. Make your way.
Thank you all so much. This is really, really inspiring and informative. You've touched on so many different areas of excellence and things that you've learned over your time in these fields. If you were to reorganize or redesign sort of the pathway to leadership and artistry as a chef or as a person who recognizes that talent, what are the areas that you would try to bring together in terms of education or creation of, the opportunity, especially if you expand that opportunity? I mean, you've mentioned obviously you have to know how to cook. You've mentioned the politics and the history. You've mentioned communications, right? The humanities. I'm just wondering if there's a way to think about redesigning the opportunities to expand them that you might want to think about or tell us about, I'm an educator, as we think about how to better serve this community.
Thank you.
I think they touched on the fact that probably the most important thing we all can do is in the culinary field, to teach your children. That's in every field, is teach your children and get a jump start. And teach them how to feed themselves, teach them how important food is and how important compassion is and service. I think one of the things about the culinary world that's really important and gets overlooked is that it's a job of service. As a chef, you're of service. And if that's a lesson we can teach the young people, besides feeding them well, besides that a life of service can bring joy, I think that's what all the chefs have found. It's impossible to do the work they do. When you go into the back of the house and see what it takes to put out 250 meals in a night, you have to be doing it for a higher reason than just to make a buck. And service and making people happy is really the foundation of it. And if we can teach our children that, it'd be a much better world.
It's funny. Americans, I think, suck at service and hospitality. Terrible at it. We're really bad, guys. And that's the thing that I think restaurants bring to the forefront, that we teach people hospitality. And hospitality is a universal skill, whether you're a bank president or a doctor, or doesn't matter. You need to learn the theory of hospitality. You know why chefs are chefs? Because we like to hide behind the stove. We don't want to engage. We're reticent to engage because we don't know how to give hospitality. We're terrible at it. So the whole celebrity thing kind of got us out of our little shell and said, you know what? You could do it. And I think the whole hospitality thing begins with, and I tell everybody in my staff, you have to look each other in the eye and say hi to each other every day. Hospitality begins right in the kitchen and in the restaurant. And I watch young people, and it's so difficult for them to learn how to shake someone's hand, say hello to someone, be kind to someone, not be selfish. We're pretty selfish as Americans, I'm sorry, but we really are. And learning to get over that, I think, is the biggest hurdle that I see in the industry.
I'm just trying. So, is your question is like what could we do better to educate kind of others, or? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think for my journey, what I wish I had more of, and I kind of learned how to fly the plane while flying it, and I think a lot of us probably, that is the leadership skills. I do think that, to your point about the kind of individualist mentality, our restaurants can be microcosms of the communities around us. And so for me, I really try to practice this kind of idea of radical hospitality, which is that it's not just on us to provide the hospitality, but it's on the guests to help engage in that hospitality. And so we really try to build with the communities around us in any neighborhood that Reem's has gone into, understanding what that community wants, what's important to them, and thinking of ourselves as a collective. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard for our employees for sure. I mean, when you're like stressed out, you're just looking out for yourself, even the best of us. And I wish I had more education and kind of how do you deal with those dynamics and build that culture of collective care, not just within my restaurant, but like with the community that we're serving. Yeah, I do feel like sometimes we think of our restaurants in silos, and we ought to be thinking of them as more touch points in the broader community.
I think for me, I always tell the people around me, make as many mistakes as you can, as soon as you can, because you're forgiven a lot more when you're in your younger 20s. If you make the same mistakes in your late 30s or later, you're just an asshole. So, you know, don't be scared. Try it out. When you're 21, 22, just stop caring about everyone else's opinion and just go do the thing you want to do. Go make all the mistakes as much as you can.
I think, in the spirit of your question, it's the things that many in the culinary community lack: knowledge of governance, knowledge of effective communications, strategy, things like this. Culinary institutions are starting to catch up to this because this is a new phenomenon. I mean, Shep is here, he's still breathing, and he kind of created this thing for us.
And I'm still making mistakes
Shep,
at 80.
But I want to ask you, what did you take from every deal you did for a chef? What did you get? You know, what did you make off the top?
I always did it pro bono.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan sweats, bleeds. All of these chefs do this. We do all of the things that we do. It's so funny because you said that you left the nonprofit world.
Now I make less than what I made
Because you were
in the
burned out and
nonprofit
then you
world.
got in the restaurant business. Look, what's the matter with this woman? But
Advocate for
it's like
yourself.
we do these things for very, 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 very small margins, and we serve our community. So we shouldn't be experts at all those things, but a lot of the big companies that tap into us have marketing departments, they have governance, they have boards, they have all of these things. What other sectors of society can do is be that board for us. Come and give us your governance skill. Come and share your communication skill with us. Do what Shep did. Do what Shep did. You don't have to tank your business model, but bring those things to us so that we are being neighborly, to Jonathan's point. It's like we suck at hospitality. The way we start becoming better neighbors is sharing everything all together. And then the whole community gets to leverage the power of the food to change the world.
Thank you very much, panel. We are actually right, I do believe, at the conclusion of today's session. So one more time, a big round of applause for our panel here. Thank you all so much. This is going to wrap up the Feast Summit, the power and the influence of the celebrity chef.
Mahalo for listening to Feast, Dish, and Dialogue. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and share it with someone passionate about food, agriculture, and hospitality. To learn more about the Feast Summit and the Hawaiʻi Food and Wine Festival, visit hawaiifoodandwinefestival.com. Be sure to join us for the next episode of Feast, Dish, and Dialogue.